I am Megan Swark, the Director of Reference Services for the Schaumburg Township District Library, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to another entry in our series of local author discussions, the Chicagoland Read All About It series. I'm again filling in for our local history librarian, Jane Rozek. Sorry about that. I'm a poor substitute for Jane. She would have this under control by now. But it is my pleasure to welcome our speaker, Dr. Bruce Kraig. Dr. Kraig is a professor emeritus in history and humanities at Roosevelt University Chicago and quondam adjunct faculty at the Culinary School of Kendall College, Chicago. His publications range from books and articles in academic journals on European and world prehistory through American history. He's written hundreds of articles on food history and culture and given hundreds of talks, conference papers, keynote addresses, and speeches on the subject around the world. He's written and edited 10 books on cookery and culinary history, including as senior editor of the Oxford Encyclopedia of Food and Drink in America, The Cuisines of Hidden Mexico, Hot Dog, A Global History, Man Bites Dog, Hot Dog Culture in America, which is the book he's going to be talking with us this evening. Street Food Around the World, the Chicago Food Encyclopedia, A Rich and Fertile Land, America's Food History and Food Cultures of the United States, Recipes, Customs, and Issues. He is the editor of the Heartland Foodways book series for the University of Illinois Press. He's the founding and emeritus president of the Culinary Historians of Chicago, co-founder of the Culinary Historians of Northern Illinois, and co-chair of the Historical Cookery Manuscript Project. And for fun, he was a writer and on-camera host and narrator for a multi-award-winning PBS series on food and culture around the world. We are delighted to welcome Bruce Kraig to the Schaumburg Township District Library. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Professor Kraig.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to talk about one of my favorite subjects. I have another favorite subject, that's chocolate, but that's enough, and also the Chicago White Sox. So anyway, I'm going to share the screen with now, and we're going to talk about hot dogs. And I hope you can see me. I'll try not to grimace too much. Everybody loves hot dogs, except maybe cows and pigs. But it is when people are asked in America, surveys of what is the quintessential American food, overwhelmingly people say hot dogs. Now you might think it would be hamburgers or pizza, which also rank highly, or Mexican tacos, but it's still hot dogs. And here's a nice display, not of Chicago hot dogs, but of hot dogs. So I'm going to do today sorry, I have a little glitch. Okay, hang on. My apologies. There we are. Forgive me for this. And let me see. There we are. Okay. Now, so embedded in American culture are hot dogs that there's a huge amount of iconography on hot dog stands themselves. And I know you've all seen this because you drive around Chicago and there are wonderfully elaborate stands. I'm going to show you some pictures of this later on, and maybe if we have time, I'll talk about the meaning of them, but also and lots of other venues. This is one done by a high school student. I was giving a talk in Chillicothe, Illinois, and a high school student sent me this, and he won a prize for it in his school art. And this, and that's the real thing. So I'm gonna tell you what these two things mean in just a bit. it gets to the naming of hot dog. How is it that hot dogs came to be hot dogs? Now, you'll all recognize this fellow, I know, if you're of an age. It's Nikita Khrushchev, who came to America in the 1950s on a famous tour. And this is at the Iowa State Fair, where he ate a hot dog. The picture's kind of large, but he's holding a hot dog and enjoying it. So people around the world eat hot dogs, and the American hot dog has spread everywhere. It's not that Europeans didn't eat sausages. They did. In fact, the American hot dog comes from Europe. But the American style of eating it out of hand with stuff on it is spread everywhere, and you can find them, and there are plenty of stands in Russia now. But this is the premiere of the Soviet Union back in the 1950s. First time in America eating, what do you give them? A hot dog. Now, there's another story. I don't have a picture of it, so I'm going to tell it to you right away. First, when foreign dignitaries have come to America, some White Houses who are more into haute cuisine, let's say the Kennedys, fed people American haute cuisine food, good, you find in a really good restaurant. But others, being maybe more American than anyone else, fed them hot dogs. And in a famous story, in 1939, King George VI, Elizabeth's father, and you'll remember him from the movie, The King's Speech, he came to America with his wife and family, that includes the young Elizabeth, on a tour to gin up support for Britain for the war that was coming. This was in the summer of 1939. And Franklin and Eleanor, took George and his family to their estate on the Hudson River, overlooking the Hudson River. Wonderful place. And they had a picnic. Now, Franklin and Eleanor didn't know anything about fancy food, nor did they care. They were progressives, and it's a kind of a staple of progressive thought that it didn't matter what you ate as long as you got the job done changing the world and improving it. So among the things that they served them were hot dogs made by Swift in Chicago. This story was in every single newspaper in America. And the headline usually read, it was on the AP, and so it read, King eats hot dogs. As if George had never eaten a hot dog. He might have or might not have, we don't know, because they had them in Britain, but it wasn't as prevalent as America. And there's a huge, not a mythology, but a story about it. So Queen Mary said to him, well, how do you eat this? And Franklin said to her, well, you put one end in your mouth and you keep shoving it until it's got down. Well, George did that, but she ate it with a knife and fork. That's the way she was. I'm telling you, it was in every single newspaper. You just go to any archive and you'll find them. This was the Americanization of the world, and this is what cemented our diplomatic ties with our fellow English speakers in England. By the way, George was a really smart guy and a wonderful diplomat. And seeing that Americans loved hot dogs, he asked for more. And the newspaper story said, King eats hot dogs and asks for more. It's a wonderful story. So anyway, when Nikita Khrushchev came, that wasn't the first time. Now, hot dog sausages are quite old in European history, and they were street food. I'll get to what a hot dog is in just a bit. It was served as street food. This is a illustration dating to the 1790s in France during the Revolutionary period, and you'll see the way that they're sausages are done. They're cooked in an open fire, a little brazier, and then it's put in a cone that he's holding in his other hand. So instead of bread, it's a cone that will turn to bread soon thereafter. He has a loaf of bread under his arm, actually. So this is the way street sausages, hot dogs, were made in America in the 19th century, originally on Coney Island and other places, as you'll see. This is the oldest way to do them. And everybody eats them. Americans love them from the top to the bottom. This is a Collier's magazine cover showing somebody who might be the British Queen or somebody like that, eating. Everybody eats hot dogs, all walks of life. Today, you walk into a hot dog stand in Chicago and you'll see the same profile. Businessmen and women, working people, laborers, everybody, cross-section of Chicago society, American society, you'll find them together in a hot dog stand. Hot dogs are sold in public venues, like that street scene you saw in France. This is Coney Island, about 1909. There's a lot of hot dog history centers on Coney Island. And in fact, there's a kind of hot dog served in Detroit, in Southeast Michigan, in New York, upper New York State, and also across the country called a Coney. And it's named for Coney Island. I'll tell you why in a little bit. But that is Coney Island, right next to Luna Park. If you look closely in the back, that was the great attraction at Coney Island. Wonderful place, burnt down long ago. And this is an American iteration of Frankfurters hot dogs. This dates from 1910, and it's in San Francisco. And they're cooked on an open fire, but a closed container, as you'll see. And the picture is actually a young boy giving his money to somebody who wants a red hot, and the devil up on that fence is a red devil. So red hot dogs. This is from Vienna around 1900, and this shows you what the original vendors who came to America from Europe sold them like, and you'll see the container where they're being cooked. These are Wienerwurst, which is a specialized kind of sausage. Now, what's in a hot dog? And a hot dog is an emulsified product. That's the technical word for it. It means that meat is put into a grinder and ground into a slurry, and that's then stuffed into a casing, either natural or artificial, and then it is steamed or it is smoked and cooked so that you have a smoke flavor and they're thoroughly cooked. This is all entirely mechanized now. Once upon a time, this is what a local butcher would have done, putting meat into his hand grinder and then stuffing it in a casing. The casings are ideally lamb. So when you see the term natural casing, it means it's usually a lamb casing, sometimes pork, but lamb is preferred. There's a monster industry of acquiring casings. Many of them come from New Zealand, where there are a lot of sheep, as you may know, and they're processed. It's a pretty awful process because you're cleaning out animal guts, literally, with horrible stuff in it, and cleaning them, and then that's what you stuff it in. There's another kind of sausage, a hot dog, called a skinless, and that was invented in the 1930s in Chicago by a company named Viscase, who invented an artificial casing. The meat is stuffed in it. It's then cooked and smoked, and then it's slit, and the casing is pulled off. And when you go to a supermarket and get cheaper hot dogs, skinless, you'll see a line down the length of it, and that's where the it was slit. Hot dogs are controlled by the USDA, and they have certain specifications: so much fat, so much salt, so many preservatives or not preservatives. It's a major argument about what should go in them, but by and large, they're skeletal meat. That is the same meat that you would eat in a steak, and that's what a good hot dog is. Other kinds of hot dogs are chicken and pork mixtures or turkey hot dogs. You'll see them; they're the cheapest ones possible, and they're made by other techniques, not just grinding, but also a slurry made from the bones, and every available bit of meat is put through a suction machine, which takes out everything, turns it into a slurry, and then puts that into the hot dog. Naturally, they don't have much snap, and they don't have much texture, and frankly, they don't have a whole lot of flavor. But these are the cheapest hot dogs you can find. Connoisseurs like us in this meeting who like adult hot dogs, like all beef hot dogs, and there's a reason for that, with natural casing, cooked properly with a good snap. Now, the butcher's hot dog machine. Maybe you've heard the phrase, the little jingle, Dunderback, Dunderback. How could you be so mean to put those little doggies in your hot dog machine? And that's exactly what this is. These are little dogs being put into a hot dog grinder and turned into, yeah, here we are. This dates to around 1910, 1911, Coney Island. And you'll see that they're putting a dog in there. Because before the Meat Act of 1909 and the Pure Food and Drug Act, people didn't know what went into their sausages. And we have gruesome accounts of awful kinds of meats, including dogs, cats, rats, everything being put into, there's a story in the New York Times in 1857 of just such a thing being put into the machine. So people didn't trust hot dogs. And you know what? They still don't. There's still a whole story, mythology around hot dogs that they're bad for you. They're dangerous for you. Well, obviously, there are health issues, but you're not going to have a stroke if you eat one hot dog every once in a while, and or have a heart attack, and or choke on a bit of hot dog. There are all kinds of things that remain from this time in the 19th century when people didn't trust what the butchers put into a hot dog. In fact, the first butchers, sausage butchers, who came from Germany, suffered from this. People made lots of jokes about them. One joke being, whenever a German butcher turned up in town, all the dogs and cats disappeared. Now, you may have heard this about other ethnic groups, but the Germans were the first. And this, I'm sorry, the slide is too big, but it's from a San Francisco newspaper in 1909. A young woman asking where was my little dog? It says in the bottom, and that's the butcher. You know the joke. So how did this come about? Now we're getting to the naming of the hot dog. When Germans arrived in the late 1840s, and especially after 1850, when we had massive migration because of political upheavals in Germany, massive migration from Germany, mostly from the Rhineland, and people speaking specific dialects of German. They settled all over the country, some in cities and many in the countryside. And when Germans came to America, they brought their food culture with them. And that food culture is sausages. There isn't another country in the world that is so focused on sausages as Switzerland, but German-speaking countries as sausages as this essential part of their cuisine and their culture. So they came with their sausages and also beer. By the way, the modern lager beer you drink now is actually brought by those Germans, not English ales, heavy ales. And they were, Germans had their own amusements, one of which is the beer garden. So on Sundays after the work week, Germans would retire to literally a garden in the woods near a town or city, or within the city, and there they would have a picnic, which is what a beer garden does. They drink beer and eat sausages. That's what Germans did, and they still do. In 1893, at the Columbian Exposition, there's a story of the Spanish princess coming to the World's Fair. It was in all the newspapers, touring the World's Fair. And around 4 o'clock, she was so famished, they had to go to the Midway, which is, where all the major attractions were at the Columbian Exposition. And there ate German beer, bread, and German Frankfurters, sausages. So that's what they did. Well, these people, Americans didn't much like German speakers, and they made fun of them and their dialect. But sausages leaked out of the German community right away, and they came to be sold on the streets of every city and at fairs and other public events. Early on in the late 1860s at Coney Island, among other places, and the whole Coney Island culture comes from that. Those vendors who were on the boardwalk, the newly emerging boardwalk. Well, comic Germans were a standard act in vaudeville throughout the 19th century and into this century. Weber and Fields, for example, the most famous comic German act, probably. And this is a song called Der Deutscher's Dog, and which means the German's dog. Deutscher is the Low German way to say Deutsch, Deutscher. So you can see that they knew what Americans knew and comics knew what the German dialect was. And this song is a song actually. I'm going to read some of it to you. Oh, where is my little dog gone? Oh, where can he be? His ears cut short and his tail cut long. Oh, where is he? On sausage is gut, bologna, of course. Oh, where can he be? They make him mit dog and they make him mit horse. I guess they make him mit he. So that's where his dog went. The date of this song is 1864. So it's not long after it's during the heavy German migration, not long after it began. So Germans are associated with dogs, sausages are dogs, things like that. There's a standard mythology which dates to the 1910s about the naming of the hot dog. And this is the story I'm going to tell to you very briefly. In 1901, at the Polo Grounds in New York City, the New York Giants ballpark, a vendor, his name is Harry M. Stevens, was selling his usual peanuts and ice cream. It was April 1st. It was a really cold day, and the fans wouldn't buy the usual stuff. So he rounded up his vendors and he told them, go across the street and there get yourself some sausages, some dachshund dogs, and then get buns at a bakery nearby and put them together and then take them and sell them. Well, they sold out immediately. And a sports cartoonist this guy named Tad, you'll see it down in the corner, Ted Dorgan, wrote a cartoon, drew a cartoon of it. In those days, there were sports cartoonists. And in it, he's had the vendors going around saying, get your red hots, get your red hot dogs. This story is all over the internet. It appears in books, just a new book I saw recently on hot dogs in Chicago. And it's completely untrue. Harry M. Stevens himself said it wasn't true. His sons said it wasn't true. But the story was given circulation in major national magazines, and it stands today. That's not how hot dogs were named. But it's a good story because it associates, one, baseball with hot dogs, and it makes hot dogs popular food that everybody going to a sporting event together, Americans all together, eating the same food, the same all-American hot dog. Well, Dorgan did actually draw a cartoon with sausages in it, and it's a 6-day bicycle race, and it dates to about 1909, maybe 1906. And here is the cartoon, and you'll see on the bottom left of your screen, you'll see little sausages running around making cute comments about I was at the beach yesterday and I got really browned, things like that. So he is popular. Dorgan was a phrase maker that became very popular in those days, like 23 Skidoo and others, such as a whole bunch of others. So it's natural kind of to give him the honor of being named hot dogs, of naming hot dogs. Here we are. This is at a 6-day bicycle race, which was they were hugely popular once upon a time. Not in America anymore. France, yes, but not there. So, so the name hot dog actually is earlier than 1901. It dates to about the late 1880s, and the first recorded evidence we have so far, until we find a newspaper article earlier, using hot dogs, is 1892 in Paterson, New Jersey. But by then it's a common phrase, so it must be much earlier. And you can see where it came from. First, it's a joke name. The joke is, what's in the hot dog? What's in that sausage? And the joke is, it's dog. So, and the word hot is hot, and in the late 19th century and 20th century, early 20th century, for example, the song "There'll Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight," which is the marching song of the Spanish-American War, and lots of others. So this joke took circulation in the, say, around 1890, and then spread everywhere in humor magazines, in newspapers. I found them in Kansas City in 1895, and all sorts of other places. So this place is is called the Dog Wagon. You can see the Yale Kennel Club lunch wagon, and it dates to 1898, 1897, and already they're called, this is a kennel club. It was a very famous place. And hot dogs were sold by the newly emerging lunch wagons, which arrived at about the same time, and on the streets, as you've seen already in some of the photographs earlier. So this is the joke. You're going to get your hot dogs at the Yale, also called Billy's Kennel Club. Now, the association with baseball is dates from the 1890s, when baseball became the national pastime. And the National League, as you know, was formed 1876, but it really takes off in the 1880s and 90s. It becomes the American national sport. And commentators talking about baseball say there has never been a more exciting or faster game than baseball. So I know that you all who are, like me, a baseball fan, sitting through 3-hour games, find that hard to believe. But the games were actually played within an hour and a half, and they didn't hit home runs. And there was a rather different kind of game. So this dates to 1931. This is the Chicago White Sox. And one of them is, I think, Luke Appling, the White Sox Hall of Fame shortstop, played for 20 years. Here they are in between a doubleheader, and they rush off to the hot dog stand and eating hot dogs with the fans around them. This is unimaginable now. This is Brooklyn, Ebbets Field in 1920, and it shows the immense crowds ready to go into the ball game, serving hot dogs outside. I have to say that this is the case also with in Chicago. The earliest evidence I found for toppings on a Chicago hot dog are 1928. I've talked to people who lived then who say that they had toppings, but the first written evidence I've seen is from a vendor outside Wrigley Field. And it was an exhibition with the White Sox. And the newspaper man reports somebody saying, "I wish they served hot dogs with piccalilli inside the ballpark as well as outside," which means relish. So pickles, onions, mustard, those are on regular, ordinary hot dogs, and then piccalilli or relish put on. So that's the beginning of the classic Chicago hot dog, I think. It's the 1920s. And this is my number 2 grandson some years ago. He's now a big galoot in between baseball at one of his baseball games in Milwaukee. He's a Brewers fan. So this shows you sausage making. I'm going to go back to that for a bit. Sausages were made by hand ground, and hand cut. This is a man named Thomas Farrington DeVoe, who was in the New York market. He wrote a famous book about the New York market in the 1850s. And this dates to 1861, this. And you see him cutting up. Any of you have seen, well, I'll just leave it at that. And here he is, in his top hat, cutting meat. And this is the industrialized part of it. This is the Swift factory in which these guys are stuffing sausages. You see that machine, it's on the far left. That guy is stuffing them, sausages and casings, and they're put up. This is women stuffing sausages as well. In these factories, as you know, Chicago is the meat center of America. By 1900, Chicago was producing 80% of America's meat. Think about that. They came from the back of the yards. Those few acres near Bridgeport, the back of the yards produced 80% of America's meat. And they were produced by the big guys. Armour and Swift are 2 of them. There are half a dozen others. And the factories were in levels, and cows were killed at the top, animals were killed at the top, and then broken down level by level in a kind of a disassembly line till they got to the bottom. And this is the bottom, where they're putting the leftovers that are ground up into sausages. And you'll see that a number of women are working there. This was cleaning casings was women's work. It's awful work. These places are cold and stinking and germ-laden. They're awful. And they weren't paid much. If you've read The Jungle, you know exactly what I mean. And I urge everybody to read that book, 1906. It's as shocking now as it was when it was first written. And here we are. This is Swift, and these are women making sausages, and this dates to around 1914. And this is another sausage company, which shows you, and this is a more artisanal sausage company. And there are the sausages on racks ready to be put into the smokers and cookers. If you go to a Polish deli, you'll see this, a smaller version of this. That's the traditional way sausages were sold. And here's how they come out. You see these displays almost anywhere. And these are really cheap ones. It's at a Mexican grocery store. This is how they're sold in the street. This is New York, which has some 3,000 street vendors. They sell all kinds of things, not just, once upon a time it was mostly sausage, dirty water dogs, and now all sorts of other things. New York is street food paradise in America. That, along with Portland, which is a food truck paradise, or Austin, Texas. Regrettably, Chicago was not there yet because of local laws, which began early in the 20th century and then were reinforced by Mayor Daley I in the 1950s and 60s. So we don't have a vibrant street food culture, not yet, or food truck culture. What's important about that is this. The hot dog business has been in the hands of immigrants. It's an immigrant story. So if you think about what the hot dog is, it's a sausage which came from Germany. It was either called a Frankfurter or a Wiener. Wiener comes from the city of Wien, and they're two distinct kind of sausages. The word Frankfurter appears, the earliest evidence is 1861. So Franks were there for a long time. And the two of them become hot dogs. In fact, if you look at the USDA site, you'll see that it uses the words hot dogs, Franks, and Wieners, and bologna, by the way, interchangeably. So those are the ones that came into the street. Now, originally in Germany, where you will routinely find something like 250 different kinds of sausages for sale. When I say Germany is sausage central, I mean it. And most of to be a sausage Wurstmeister, you have to go through considerable training, years and years of training. And those are the guys who the major sausage makers in America import to run their kitchens and their operations. But at any rate, Frankfurters have a little pork in them, and originally, and Wieners, which are really likely Weisswurst, are mostly pork and veal with a little beef in them. When they came to America, they transformed because of American taste and also because of ethnicity. When we think of a Frankfurter, at least when I do, I think of an all beef product. If you're going to go get a hot dog, you're likely to get a Vienna hot dog, which is an all beef hot dog. And if you think of a wiener, you might think of Oscar Mayer wieners because of their heavy advertising, as in, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener. And those are pork, and now mixtures of pork and chicken and maybe turkey. And they're whiter in color and have somewhat different flavor. But that's not the way they are in Europe. That's the way they are in America. And the reasons are that most German sausages have pork in them, or are pork, because it's a pork-eating area, and that's their tradition. But in America, Frankfurters fell into the hands of Jews and then other ethnicities. Late in the 19th century, heavy immigration from Russia, Poland, Eastern Europe, Lithuania, of Jews fleeing the shtetls, fleeing pogroms, and worse, came to America. Something like 3 million or so. Even today, New York is the largest Jewish city in the world, bigger than Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. And they brought their food preferences with them, and that is not to eat pork. It doesn't mean that a lot of them were religious or observed the laws of kashrut. They were, in fact, they just had a distaste for it. And so when they took up the hot dog business, beginning in the 1890s, they made their sausages for their local clientele. That is, they made their frankfurters all beef. These businesses flourished, and the paradigmatic hot dog in places like New York and Chicago, where there are big Jewish populations, and then elsewhere, are all beef. That's how frankfurters came to be, all beef. And I think they're preferable to any other myself. The Chicago hot dog, which has a lot of stuff on it, acquires these elements from Greeks and Italians. At the same time that Jews were moving down to Maxwell, and in the Jewish quarter, the Jewish ghetto around Maxwell Street, I'm talking about the early 1900s and into the 1920s, right next to them came Italian immigrants and Greek immigrants. The original, what's today Greektown, has mostly disappeared, but it was the original Greektown, and then it moved elsewhere, and some of it remains on Halsted Street. And that's right next to Little Italy. And they got into the food business, Italians and Greeks, right away. Why do these immigrant groups get into the food business? Because it's the cheapest way to get into the American economy. Selling food on the streets cheaply is the way for you to make a living if you can't make a living another way. For example, you might work in a factory. Of course, many people did, because that's why you came to Chicago, because of the factories. But a lot of people were outside that. And street vending, it just is a simple and easy way. It's not easy, it's hard work, but it's a simple way to get into the market. This is the case all over the world. A famous anthropologist called this penny capitalism. You put a small amount of money into your product, into your vehicle, and you sell as much as possible, and you scrimp and save, and your family works there, and you work your way up the economic ladder. I know one hot dog stand vendor who brags about his condo on the Gold Coast and his condos in Florida. You can make a lot of money if you know what you're doing. So street food, fast food is always the entryway into the market, and immigrants to America took this up. Greeks and Italians did the same. They had vegetable carts. Then they went into the vegetable business, the wholesale business, and the Greeks and Italians fought it out, actually, were rivals in that business, and the Greeks mostly won, but there's still a number of Italian places, wholesale fruit and vegetable places. Where the Italians really dominated was in New Orleans, where most of the Italians were Sicilian, and they became major players in South American produce, and they still are. So this is the way you work your way up. Well, the stuff you find on a Chicago hot dog, which may date to the 1920s, is, if you look at it, think about it, it is a German sausage passed through Jewish hands. It becomes all beef, natural casing, lamb, not pork. It's on a bun, and buns appear in the 1880s, late 1870s and 80s. The earliest evidence we have is from Coney Island, where there's specific bun makers for New York hot dogs. And the bun didn't have poppy seeds. That's a later addition. The buns were made by local Jewish bakers. And it has on it tomatoes, which will come from Greek and Italian merchants and cart vendors in the street. It has onions and mustard, which are German, of course, and East European. And it has piccalilli, which you can look at as relish or jardiniere. and it has celery salt, and it has pickle spears on it. And pickles are quite old. They're German. And one of the oldest food businesses in Chicago, dating almost as soon as Chicago was founded, is the pickle business. People ate a lot of pickles once upon a time. And so it's a melding of these three immigrant cultures. Now, in other parts of, there we go, it's one of my favorite. This dates to 1916, and it is the Mexican, if you look at the sign in the back, the Mexico-US border, and look what's on it. You cross the border, you can have hamburger, hot dogs, coffee sandwiches. Great. And look at the way hamburger is spelled, Hamburger, right. And this is I'm sorry you don't have a wider shot of this. This is my favorite hot dog stand. It no longer exists. It was right in the middle of Maxwell Street, right in the middle of the street. It's called Maddie's. Brilliant. And here is the most famous hot dog stand in the world. I know you know it, and you've seen it probably if you watched the eating contest. But this is it. And this is the first place I ate hot dogs back in right after World War II on Coney Island. Yep. And I can still taste it and still smell the sea air around it. But this is Jewish. Nathan Handwerker was a Polish immigrant, started this in 1916. He had worked at other restaurants, worked his way up he was from Poland, poor kid, worked his way up to create this. He was a brilliant marketer and brilliant salesman. He had a really good product. Sausages, hot dogs made to his specifications. Potatoes that he literally supervised being picked in Long Island. And he invented the crinkle cut. So this is great. This is one in New York. This is another variation of hot dogs, this is begun by Greeks as a fruit juice stand. If you go to New York, you'll see a lot of papaya stands. They're all over the place. And that dates to the 1930s when people drank a lot of fresh juices, papaya being one of them, newly discovered. And then they were put together at Papaya King and Gray's Papaya. There are some quite famous ones with hot dogs. So they're famous as hot dog stands. This has been completely remodeled. This is the old one, it's on 92nd Street on the north side. Here's a little stand in New Jersey, Wonder Wiener, Italian hot dogs. I'll tell you what they are in a second. This is Franny's. It's in River Road. It's near Gene and Jude's, a really good place. And you can see the hot water dogs down on the lower right. And this is what they look like. As you'll see, they're kind of eaten by me. You can't resist. Sorry, this is backwards, but you recognize this one. This is a national sales pitch started in the 1930s by Oscar Meyer, who are also brilliant marketers. And Oscar Meyer is German. By the way, Franny's is owned by Italians from Little Italy originally. And Oscar Meyer was a German from Bavaria. He came through Detroit to Chicago. 1883, he set up on near North Side with his brother. And they had high quality sausages called Edelweiss, a common German name for, the flour. And he had high quality sausages, but his marketing was great. He recognized right away the value of marketing. They put a yellow band around each sausage to show that it was handmade and wonderful. And that eventually became the massive national company that it is now. But this in the 1930s was one of their first great marketing coups. Their other was, by the way, the first little Oscar was the mayor of Munchkinland in The Wizard of Oz. And the second major coup was to realize that children would order hot dogs and could make them at home. So latchkey children would use Oscar Mayer. Most of their marketing went from being high quality, fine sausages to children. And that's a large part of the market to this day. And there are a number of hot dog stands that have iconography that represents what a hot dog is and the idea of fun. The idea of fun from Coney Island and at public events, baseball, translates to hot dog stands. You ever walked into a hot dog stand and seen people frowning and scowling? No, you don't. And that's what Al's here, which is on Lawrence Avenue, and you probably passed it or know it, shows. Here's Henry's. This is in Cicero or Berwyn, which is wonderful. Tells you what the idea of a hot dog is. Chicago hot dog is a meal unto itself because it's abundance. Americans, as a street food, as a cheap food, Americans want to have a lot of food. Abundance is the phrase. Abundance. That's what American food is, and that's what Henry's is telling you here. Another one showing how much fun this is. It's on, I think it's on North Harlem, Lawrence, I think. I've forgotten. I haven't been by there in a while. This is Jim's original, not the original, but these are the guys who invented the Maxwell Street Polish. And when it was on its site on Halsted and Maxwell Street, it's moved over to Union now. But does this not show you what a hot dog stand is, what the experience of eating out? You can't sit down at Jim's. Doesn't matter what the temperature is. And everybody's there. You can park without parking in a meter illegally, and all the cops are there too, watching you and doing the same thing. Now, there's another specialized one called a corn dog. And corn dogs originate in Texas, I believe. There's a considerable argument about it. There's an outfit in Springfield, Cozy Dog, who sometimes is said to have invented it. They didn't. It comes from Texas. It's certainly Southern because it's corn. It's dog stuck in a corn pone, in a corn batter, and that is a Southern thing. It dates to the 1920s. I have the patents for the first molds for making them, date to about 1924 or so. But these are everywhere. Now, this is at the State Fair, the Illinois State Fair in Springfield. You can't walk into that fair and not come out smelling like grease from all the corn dogs that are there. It's a really specialized thing. You can get corn dogs in lots of other places, but this is the paradigmatic place. You must go there. Not that the sausages are good, but the corn dog itself altogether is pretty good. And this one's Polish. It's near it's near Devon Avenue. It doesn't exist anymore. This one shows you Greek. This happens to be in Las Vegas. This is a cart it appeared in the summer many years up on the north side of Chicago, near Devon, just south of Devon in the park. This is Lucky Dogs in New Orleans, showing you the varieties of ways you can sell them. It's eaten heavily in New Orleans, which is a distinctive cuisine, Creole and Cajun, or a mixture of the two. And yet these Lucky Dogs, which are served quite plainly, cover the place. This is a picture from 1940. It's the first hot dog eaten by Chinese sailors who have just come with a cargo to the port of Long Beach. And here they are eating a hot dog, and you see his reaction to it. This is a a kind of hot dog served in New Jersey. This is called Ruth's Hut. It's one of the most famous stands in America. Northern New Jersey has 6 different hot dog styles, not 1, but 6. And they're each slightly different or very different. Ruth's Hut specialty are called rippers. And rippers are hot dogs that are deep fried. And you can get them in 3 styles: regular, rippers, or cremators. And the cremators are burnt so you can hardly eat them. Anyway, it's served with a special kind of carrot-based relish, which you won't find anywhere else. It's invented by Ruth's Hut around 1920. And these are local Jersey guys. They're bikers, actually, who are really nice guys. and they come every week to eat at Ruth's Hut. It's great. This is what North Jerseyans look like. Great. And this is a real hot dog scene. This one is it shows you the fanciful hot dog stands, showing you how fun is. This is up on near the old Morton Salt factory in Chicago. There we are. Sorry, that's Cozy Dog Drive-In, and this is put out by the Tourism Bureau of the state of Illinois. The birthplace is really good. Now, this is the most famous iconographic hot dog stand in Chicago. It's the second one, actually, not the first. And it's called, you know what it is? Super Dog. And Maury and Flory, those are the Bermans, founded the place right after World War II, and it's still going strong. They have both passed away, unfortunately. They were wonderful people. And their nephews and nieces still run it, and it's still great. This is the last drive-in in Chicago. This one is in Wheeling. It's their new branch, built a few years ago. But it's a must-see. It's on Devine Avenue, and it's a must-go-to place, really. This is in Arizona, and it's run by a German guy who was married to a Mexican, and it's in Tucson, which has a specialized kind of hot dog. They come from it's a bacon wrapped hot dog that comes from served with a guerrero chili and roasted onions, knob onions. It's a terrific. It's called a Sonoran Hot Dog. It's really good, and especially the grilled onions and guerrero chilies. And here's the place. These places are packed out all the time. This is one of my favorites. It's Ducks. It's on Ashland Avenue and near Grant, and you may have passed it lots of times. It's actually a good place. You want to walk in there. It's a real old-timey stand, like really old-timey, like it was in the 50s, right after World War II. It's named for their owner, whose name is Dukowitz, I think. I've forgotten. But Walt Disney actually sued them over that name and lost. So it wasn't named for Walt Disney. And this shows Bunyan's. This was in Berwyn. And it shows you what the idea of a hot dog is. Big, lots of food. This is no longer there. It's now in Atlanta, Illinois. Moved away. This is Tale of the Pup, which shows you, as you can see, the food is the thing itself, which is a popular kind of theme in the 1920s. You can buy this. It's for sale now. It's in a warehouse. There's Super Dog at night. Isn't that great? And guess what? This is in Vienna, Wiener Würstel. They're all over the place in Vienna, and they're quite good. They serve Wiener Wurst. And this is what a Wiener Wurst looks like in America. It's a Weisswurst. You call it a Bratwurst, which is kind of Weisswurst. And this is Ruth's Hut, and you can see what a cremator looks like. That's the one on the top. That's a regular ripper in the middle, and I think the cremator is the one on the top. And that's the sauce they put on. It's a must. If you're traveling around the country doing hot dogs, it's a must place. And this is a chili dog, Coney dog, and it's in Detroit. It's Lafayette, Coney Island. This is begun by Greeks in 1913, and Greek immigrants coming over to work in America got to come to Detroit to work in the auto business, auto factories, stopped at Coney Island or went through there, and then their fellows told them, Coney Island, has got this magical name, and it's fun, and if you're ever going to do hot dogs, then call them Coneys. Now, the thing about Coneys is it has a sauce on it, and the sauce they often call chilies or chili dogs. It's not really a chili, it's something like it. But the sauce itself is Greek, and it's the same kind of sauce you would find in a moussaka, or maybe or other Greek tomato-based sauces. It's heavily spiced, has cinnamon and nutmeg and other spices. Again, that you just look at a Greek cookbook and you'll see what it is. And that's put on the top. They're meat-based mostly. Some are not, some aren't. Now, Lafayette, Coney Island, which is begun by Greeks, and the two were side by side. They were cousins, Lafayette and American Coney Island, right next to each other in downtown Detroit. Lafayette was sold to its employees who were Lebanese, and that guy's Lebanese. It shows you the nature of the hot dog. It's a melding. It's what America is, melding, a melding of cultures. This is Papaya King in its new iteration, and these are some of the kinds of hot dogs they sell. This is the one in the middle is a slaw dog, which is this southern and around Atlanta, and in fact, all over the South there and West Virginia, they're really good if you get a really good slaw. And these guys happen to make a good one. This is the most famous hot dog stand in Europe and one of the most famous in the world. And you'll see where the Coke sign is, Islendinga. It's in Iceland. It's in Reykjavik. And they serve, it's called pulser, and on the top, which means, hot dogs. And they're made with lamb, mostly. Actually, it's not all that great, but it's really famous. So if you happen to stop at Iceland, you got to go there. This is down in Arizona again, and this is the original Sonoran Hot Dog place. It's a classic window, walk-up window, served through a slit, through a window, and you can get all these different things on it. The Sonoran Hot Dog you'll see up at the top left, and you'll see what they look like with crema on it. This is Filipino. It's a Filipino chain, and the Filipinos eat a lot of hot dogs, pork hot dogs, Oscar Meyer type. And this is a chain which originated in the Philippines. It's all over the place. And this one happens to be in Las Vegas. The food here is terrible, in my opinion, including the hot dogs, and the worst pancit I've ever eaten. But it's hugely popular. Maybe I just had a bad batch, I don't know. But you'll see them, and they're spreading all over. This happens to be in Poland, as you'll see, right? Hot dog, toasty. This is a Korean hot dog. You say, what? What they do is they take a hot dog, they put it in batter, they put chopped potatoes around it, you wrap it in the hot dog, you put the potato chunks on it, they cling to the batter on the outside, then you deep fry it. And they leave those out on stands all day, the whole day. They are awful, but really kind of interesting. If you like fried potatoes, Korean food in general is really good, but that isn't. And this is a Korean hot dog stand near Seoul, and you'll see hot dogs up at the top. Koreans, are quite close to Americans because of the Korean War, and we've been tied together economically forever. This happens to be in Perugia, Italy, and you'll see on the outside of a place, hot dog, right? This is right in front of the British Museum. And this vendor is a Turkish, who was taking hot dogs. He thinks they're American, but they're not. But they're pretty interesting. And he does a roaring business. He's been there 20 years or so. Now, those are interesting places around the world. This is an Italian hot dog. And it was invented in Newark, New Jersey by an Italian family, the Rappiocci family, who were factory workers in Newark. And they would get together with their friends working in the factories on Sunday and play cards. And they ate hot dogs, but one of the family thought they would do this. This is a pizza dough bread. It's special. Yeah, it has to be this special kind of bread. Look, you see it's nice and crispy. The hot dog itself is flat griddled, like most New Jersey style dogs. But they're Jewish. They came from a Jewish deli right near in the neighborhood they lived in. And it has on it grilled peppers underneath here and fried potatoes. And of course, mustard. And this, you want to talk about abundance or a full meal? This is one of them. You can't get through this. It's monstrous. It's the Italian hot dog. There are stands all over the place. It's a huge amount of food. And the sausages are made specifically by Jewish sausage makers. The buns have to be made specially from an Italian bakery. Is that interesting? And the style itself with green peppers and the potatoes are specifically Calabrian, where the family's from, the Calabrese. And they taste really great, but it's a huge amount of food. And you can think about it, guys working in factories, women working in factories, doing heavy manual labor. This is the kind of food that they would eat. And this is part of the hot dog story. Hot dogs are not fancy food, chefized with chefs doing this or that or the other, making fancy things. It's kind of plain, and it's abundant and direct and of the people. It's a democratic food. This is a ripper. Those are rippers. This is a version of a Chicago one that I found in Colorado. They don't know what they're doing. They thought it looked good. And I'm ending with this. This is from the New York World's Fair, 1939. It is, in fact, the very day and year I was born. And I found this. And this is from the Thai Pavilion. And as you see, the Balinesian Pavilion. And you see hot dog and ice cream. So I have this up on my wall. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you so much. That is fascinating. We do have some time for questions. If anyone has a question they would like to post, please put it in the chat, and I'll make sure that it gets answered. Right now, we don't have any questions. I'm really interested. I spent a lot of my youth in Texas and grew up, owning the corn dog as a state food. So I'm interested to learn that there's some kind of competition between Texas and Illinois for who developed the corn dog. That's
right.
Very funny.
Some people think it's deep south, but I think pretty clearly it's Texas, and it's the state fair.
Totally. Well, Any other questions? I don't see any questions or comments coming in, so we can call it if no one has any questions that they would like to ask. I'll just extend my thanks so much. This is so fascinating. I love the idea of the hot dog as being like representative of American democracy. Every culture that has contributed to making our country what it is apparently has run their hands over the development of hot dog culture in this country. It's fantastic. And I, pass Henry's every day on my way to work in the morning. So it's right around the corner from where I live.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to ask why no ketchup on a hot dog?
Because it's gross? No.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, basically that's the case. It's an example of marketing. Nobody said never put ketchup on a hot dog before, say the 1950s, and it became a trope, especially pushed by the Vienna Beef Company. So it becomes a Chicago thing, and then becomes national. I might remind you of a famous movie with Clint Eastwood. You know, in which Dirty Harry, and in which one of his colleagues is about to eat it opens in a hot dog shop. He's about to eat a giant hot dog, and some villains rob a bank across the street, and he goes out and shoots them. And then in the next movie, one of his colleagues is about to eat a hot dog, and Dirty Harry reproaches him and says, "You're not going to eat that." He said, "I've seen murderers and rape and the worst things possible, but I've never seen the worst thing I've ever possibly seen is putting ketchup on a hot dog."
That is so funny. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions coming in. From Jim wants to know, does a hot dog have so much preservative that it never spoils?
No, it spoils. It has only some preservatives in it. Sodium nitrate. There's been a controversy about sodium nitrites and nitrates. One becomes the other, and if you eat a lot of nitrites, it's carcinogenic, but you'd have to eat pounds and pounds of it. So there's a little nitrate in them, which is a preservative. So people now make hot dogs advertised as natural because it has celery juice in them and beet juice in them, which of course are nitrates.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not artificial. The artificial ones you can control the amount you put in, but with those juices you can't. So you don't know how much is going to exactly be in every one of them. No, they're not preserved. They'll spoil, of course, right away.
Okay, well, we've got time for one more question. So we've got one that I hope won't be too controversial, but in your opinion, what is the best Chicago hot dog?
Oh, this is difficult. Several of my favorite stands have closed. Like Hot Dogs, which was great. Their regular hot dog, not the fancy ones, made with varieties of meats, was just great. And my favorite one on Belmont Avenue closed. The guy was 30 years in the business. There's no point in mentioning it. So when I take people now to a hot dog stand, where we go to Murphy's, that's the one that closed, Maury O'Malley's, which is near Sox Park. And they do it the right way. I would go to Red Hot Ranch, which is very good. It's on Ashland. It's owned by the same people who own Wiener Circle. It's really good. I think I would go to mm, 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 uh, there are a lot of them. I can't. I'm sorry. There's one down in the loop. There are a whole bunch of them which are pretty good. Hey, Gene and Jude's are really good on River Road.
Okay.
And so are Franny's up the road. Gene and Jude serves depression dogs. They're not loaded up, and they're always jammed. And they have really good fries. They're famous for their fries. But if you go just up River Road to the north, you'll find Franny's. It's a little house, looks like, and they do really good dogs as well. And there are good ones all over the place.
We have a vote coming in for Jimmy's as the best in Chicago.
Jimmy's a great place. That's a depression dog. It's an original. It looks like a 1950s place, and it is. They know what they're doing. You know, you have to know what you're doing to make it good. Can I tell you a story?
Well, yes, absolutely. I have one more question to ask you, and then definitely. So, Jeannie has commented that Lum's would boil their hot dogs in beer. Does any other place do that?
They do it in Milwaukee. It's how you make bratwurst. So
Excellent.
I don't know if they did hot dogs. I didn't know somebody did that with hot dogs. You could, you don't boil a hot dog. You put it in hot water, 190 degrees, and no more than 20 minutes. Otherwise, it's ruined. So it's not. If they put it in beer, that would be pretty interesting. But
Sure.
That is the standard way of making bratwurst. Boil it in beer and then grill it.
Excellent. All right. Tell us your story.
Okay, the story is, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a crew from ABC News came to do a story on Chicago hot dogs. So they called me up and said, let's go, what do you know about, let's go around to stands. So we got in a truck, it was a Chicago crew, and we're driving to these different hot dog stands to sample them. And they're quite good ones all over, including Murphy's, my favorite, which is now closed, and others, and Wiener Circle, of course, to be insulted, and others. There are a bunch of them. So we're in the back of the car in the truck with the Chicago crew, and they start talking about hot dogs. The crew, and one guy was from the north side, and he said, "Oh, what's the best stand?" He said, "The Leon's, near where I grew up." By where I grew up, right? And then another guy was from the south side and said, nah, you got to go to Dave's. It's over on 47th Street. That's the best place. So there are 4 or 5 crew members. They all started talking about what's the best hot dogs. And they said, it's the one where they grew up. It was their neighborhoods. Because in Chicago, older Chicago, neighborhoods had hot dog stands and people identified with them. It was their thing. So the guy's listening to this, the producer from ABC, and he said, aren't they all the same? And they said, they have the same stuff on them. No, I thought they were going to throw them out of the truck. And they said, no, they're all different, and you have to know what you're doing. And that Leon's was sold, and now it's not any good because the guys don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to make them right. And so Chicagoans are connoisseurs of hot dogs. It's a gourmetship of Chicago hot dogs. Then the guy said, will any of you ever put ketchup on a hot dog? Then they threw him out of the truck.
Well, I am getting a question. I am supposed to ask if Joey Chestnut is going to die of cancer.
No, one of my former students is a competitive eater and has competed in the Nathan's hot dog contest a number of times. He and Joey Chestnut are big pals. And he said, Joey Chestnut vomits.
Oh, nice. Is that going to keep him safe?
So does he. And they have to train yourself to be able to eat. I mean, they have to go through rigorous training to be able to eat. So no, he's not going to die of cancer.
Awesome. Well, I think that that's a positive note to conclude our festivities with this evening. I'd like to thank everyone for spending the evening with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Kraig. This has been an enjoyable presentation, and I would encourage everyone to, get a hold of one of Dr. Kraig's many books on the subject. And thank you so much. Really, it's been delightful.
It's always a pleasure. I'm sorry we can't share hot dogs.
Next time when we gather in person, hopefully in the future, maybe we'll make it an eating and learning experience.
Excellent.
All right. Okay.